This conference will now be recorded.
2025. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Although it's getting close to the statute of limitations on wishing people Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Okay, so first order of business is to accept the meeting minutes from December, so hopefully everybody had a chance to look at those.
Did you want to do introductions?
Oh,
Oh, you guys kind of already met, but I don't know. Maybe it's helpful. Just, yeah.
Why don't we wait till we get to
Okay.
9 and 4, because we'll get these next ones pretty quickly. So motion to accept the meeting minutes from December.
I accept.
Somebody second?
Oh, no, second, yeah.
Okay. All right. Get that, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right, next on the agenda is the election of officers for 2025. So, I don't know how you wanted to handle this, or?
So if anyone wants to nominate someone, if you want to nominate yourself, so I think what we're looking at is chairperson and vice chair. Role of chair is what Frank has been doing, and then vice chair is in the absence of someone being there. I don't think we need a secretary just because I'll handle, all the minutes and stuff like that. The only thing is, I was telling Frank that looking at actually the like the authorizing legislation for the EAC, so it's actually the Board of Commissioners that needs to approve or appoint the chair. That's in state code. So what we talked about is if you guys do a vote and your recommendation, what I'll do is at the next Board of Commissioners meeting, I'll say the EAC recommends this person for chair and vice chair, and then just have them confirm that.
Why nominate?
We do like a status quo.
Yeah.
Can we do status quo? That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Frank, you're willing to accept that?
Yeah, sure.
All in favor? Frank?
Right. Sure.
And then,
Figure it out.
yeah, that's fine. Vice chair. Sarah, you were the vice chair at this point. Continue doing that?
I mean, I'm fine with it.
All right, then I'll nominate Sarah for vice chair.
I'll second that if I need to.
You break the bastard, are you?
I think that.
Anyone opposed to Sarah for vice chair? Don't think so. Okay.
The record shows
I mean, you have to call me if you're.
Let the record shows you. All right, so next, we have the pleasure of two folks from the Bushville Township EAC to come talk to us about what they've been doing as an EAC. We're I don't know if you know all our history here, but we are pretty new as an EAC. We constituted EAC, I guess, since middle last year, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we had an EAC in name that had nobody on it for God knows how many years.
Probably decades, yeah.
I think you said 20.
Yeah, I think even longer. I think it was like early 70s that it was created, and there was like another board, like the air pollution board or something like that. But yeah, never staffed, never had anyone on it.
And then about 4 years ago, the previous board of commissioners created what they call the Green Advisory Council. And I'm not sure why they didn't just reconstitute the EAC, but they had a separate committee called the Green Advisory Council. Actually, all of us were members of that at some point. That was sunset when the EAC was reformed. I guess, state code, we're supposed to have an EAC.
Yeah, so it was.
Advisory Council is kind of
It was a cleanup, sort of, we had the EAC on the books in our ordinance recognized, but no one really on it. They hadn't had a meeting in decades. We had the Air Pollution Board, which had very similar kind of focus, but really more focused just on air pollution. And then we had the GAC, which was enacted by resolution, which was pretty limited in what you guys could do. And then so it was sort of rewrite the ordinance, be very specific into what the function of the EAC would be based off of what kind of the state guidelines would be, and get rid of all those other ones just to kind of clean up the ordinance. So now you have the successful EAC. We have 5 members. One of them is absent tonight, and we have up to 7. So I made a plug at our Shade Tree Commission meeting before this to try to get some new membership. But
And so since we've been reformed, we've been focusing on follow-up actions to the recent open space planning that the township has done. And so we're sort of getting organized around how we can support that, particularly with regard to preservation of open space and the impact that may have on new development within the township. We expect over time, though, we're going to broaden our scope to include more than just open space preservation. And tonight we're going to talk about climate action. The planning commission work on that, and maybe some follow-on actions we choose to pursue in that regard. We previously, as a Green Advisory Council, we spent a lot of time on trying to understand solid waste management practices within the township, and I think that's something we're going to revisit at some point too. But anyway, it would be great to hear from you folks as an established EAC, what your priorities have been, what you found has worked well, maybe some challenges you've had, how you've worked with your supervisors, board commissioners. I think it'd be helpful for us to hear a little bit about that as well. In that area. So anyway, so I'm Frank Petroselli. I'm the soon-to-be new chair of the Environmental Advisory Council, South Whitehall Township.
I'm Natalie. I work at Public Works for South Whitehall.
I'm Marie. Hello, you guys.
Yep.
So great to see you again. I'm really looking forward to your presentation and some of the success stories from the township, which I think would encourage all of us, make us like, okay, so that'll be great to hear, but thanks for being here.
Chris Stroller, obviously, you know me. I'm the staff liaison. Usually we have also Tom Petrucci, our township manager, sometimes Mike Elias, our MS4 coordinator in Public Works, sometimes Herb Bender, who's our director of operations and director of Public Works as well.
I'm Sarah Seipel. I'm out in hallway. I was part of the EA or the GAC before this. I signed up because I just wanted to see how I could make a change and see how I could give my own opinion and see how I could help. That's really my motivation. So anything you guys have to tell today will be greatly appreciated. So thank you for coming today.
Yeah, my name is Derek Pinkham. I'm just a resident, just again trying to enact some change rather than just post on Facebook about it.
That's great. I'm Jason Smith. I got involved with Bushkill Township 28 years ago, probably as a consultant, as an environmental consultant for 30 years. And I moved into the area with my wife is from the town, from Nazareth, and they had a farm in Bushkill, and we lived at the farm for a while before we built our own house. So while I was there, I did some project work in the area. I was bringing some environmental stuff to Jacobsburg State Park and whatnot, and man, they got their meat hooks in me right away. We're just like, you don't need to do this. So, it was fine. I wasn't opposed to that. I did a lot of speaking presentations before that. So I was like, I can jump into this world. And then I got involved with EAC, which originally started in 1980 in Bushkill, and was very active for a long time. But there was like one big issue: was an incinerator up near Wind Gap was proposed, and that like took years to get that ironed out. And after it went away, so did a lot of the interest in whatever the EAC was doing. And so the EAC kind of just disbanded and was no longer. But we had the ordinance in place, and there was this thrust to put it back together. So I agreed to help with that and get involved, and found myself quickly in the chair position with that. And then I think it was a few years later, 3 years later, I was asked to step up to be a township supervisor when one of the supervisors passed away. So after some heated discussion with my wife, who's very political and nothing to do with this. I told her that I could not be that kind of hypocrite because for probably about the time I was 7, 8 years at that point, I was telling everybody I was going to these watershed meetings with, if you want to make change, you have to get in a position to make the change. You can't just sit there and scream at the wall. You've got to be able to actually vote on things and propose things. So I decided that I would give it a shot. Agreed I'd resign if it didn't work out so well, but 20 some years later now, I'm still a township supervisor, and I've enjoyed it. It's been good. So it's helped with the interactions of the EAC to do that, but it's not necessary. I don't think. I think the main thing is to have a strong EAC and work well with others. Play well in the sandbox type of thing. And that's a little bit of a tough thing to do because people inherently, too many people, inherently push back on environmentalism. It's a dirty word instead of a good thing. But I think what you can show the rest of the township is it's not that. And it doesn't have to be that. It can be a very positive thing. It can be a very helpful thing to the other boards, to the supervisors, which we'll talk about a little bit. And that you're a teammate to them, not somebody playing against them. And it's amazing how once everyone starts to realize that, and there will be those moments, those tense moments, because they're not sure, but once they realize that, it starts to come together, and that's when it's going well, and you want to make sure you always keep that, So, and I think that's been one of the main successes of our EAC versus so many that I've seen in other townships. And working as a consultant, I was with Hanover Engineering for 18 years. I got to go to a lot of township meetings, and I got to see a lot of other municipalities that had EACs, and not too many of them that didn't have friction. And some of them have even disbanded their EACs as a result of that over the years. So I think EACs tend to go in that direction, and I think maybe it's because of the environmentalism part, because we're so passionate about what we're doing, and we want people to just do it. That we don't care if you don't understand why. It's the right thing to do, and you need to do this. Well, people don't like being told what to do. That's I've learned. Well, a few do, most don't. So I think that it's getting a handle on that and trying to lead in a positive way, and not the negative environmentalism way. And I'm not saying that you're going to do that. I just have seen many do it, and I've seen the results of it, and it's not good. So, yeah, so that's, I guess that's kind of my story. And my term as supervisor is probably going to be ending because I took a job with the Army Corps of Engineers as kind of a step down from the crazy consulting. And then again, I could be losing my job within days.
I worked in the Navy, so
It was my first year, so I'm technically a probie, I guess. And they asked for a list of all the probies. I was like, well, that could be the end. If it is, it's okay. So, but yeah, so I'm going to stay on as EAC chairman, assuming they reappoint me, and work with Gary. So I know this is a lot, but it's the history of things, and you want to know what happened with us. Our EAC was great. I think we had such a great group early on. People were positive. We were doing some really good things in the township. We were growing things. And we started out with our official map, which a lot of people know about us for, because we needed a stopgap measure to deal with development that was coming. The interchange with 33 down to 78 was going to happen. And when it did, it was going to open the floodgates for Bushkill and Plainfield and some of the northern townships that were, easy mark for new development for bedroom communities for North Jersey. And, it was under construction, and we were like, what are we going to do? Because you can't play with zoning and saldo that quickly. There's so many things you can't do quickly as a municipality, but the official map was something we could do really quickly. And it allowed us to protect a whole lot of land in Bushkill Township, and land that was resource-based, right? So we added our riparian woodlands to our official map just like that. And within, I'd say, a few meetings, we had this massive protection of our resources in the township before we could address it through other ordinances like zoning and saldo and standalones. So that was like a big thing for us. But then there's a responsibility of dealing with implementing the official map, because that's not easy. And we'll both talk about that. But, we did that, and then we, right from there, it was like, oh, we really need, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna have that kind of level of protection on that land. You need some way to purchase land if the rubber hits the road. So we immediately got an open space plan thing going. We went through all the stuff that you go through with that, tax and the plan, all the approvals, and so we did that, and it went very well. And we got the open space plan going. We had a lot of residents that were interested, and that started to go well. Everyone saw what we were doing, and DCNR and DEP and land trust, and everybody's like, hey, we have money, and we're like, well, we'll take it. And it was great because we preserved a lot of land fast, but then it was like, what are we gonna do with this? We're all volunteers, we have day jobs, there's so much to do with land preservation that is a good thing. I would tell everyone to do it for sure, but there's so much to do. And we got to the point where those of us who were volunteers just really, I said we weren't doing a good job with it. And we talked about what we do next. And we decided we would create an open space coordinator position. And, I think, hopefully Kerry would say we did it right. He's been around 7 or 8 years?
6.
6 years.
Almost
Okay,
6.
so
Yep.
yeah, whatever. Maybe 20 in no time.
It's
And
flooded.
yeah, and we tried to do it right so that it was an attractive position and had a lot to it, had growth opportunities and doing other things for the municipality in addition to open space stuff. And so we advertised for it. We knew of Kerry through the state park and wildlands conservancy work, and we knew he'd be a good candidate, and we advertised for it. He applied. I don't remember. We had other applicants. I don't even
I think
remember.
you said you did have at least one.
Oh, I know we did. Yeah, that's right. We did one because one of our EAC members really wanted it. Just got a little funky. But Kerry was a solid choice for this position, had the right background and everything else. And, it was the right move at the right time because he was able to come in and take over all the stuff that we were floundering with and really, I think, cement with our community what open space can be in your community. Between the management of the properties and the trails, we created a bunch of preserves. It just really came together well, and it's been going well. And I think he keeps getting new stuff added to his plate all the time. So it's like there's things I don't even know about that he's doing, and when he tells you, like, wow, that's really cool. And I'm like, so
yeah. When I first started, I was thinking, I don't know if there's going to be enough work to keep me busy year round.
Yeah.
But Jason and I were talking about it, and just as every year kept going on, more work kept coming and kept getting added on, and there's like annual stuff that you had to keep up on. And now I'm at the point where I'm doing so much every year, and more stuff keeps coming, and I want to keep adding it. And I'm like, am I really going to have enough time to do all this stuff? So trying to balance it. But yeah, so my name's Kerry Ryder. I'm the open space coordinator and assistant zoning officer. I was just appointed assistant zoning officer this year for the township. So I've been helping out with zoning stuff here and there with our previous zoning officer. Then he retired, and our new zoning officer, who was the planning administrator, stepped up, and he was the assistant before. So that's how I got appointed assistant zoning officer. But it helps out, and it all kind of plays hand in hand because there's so many things in the zoning world that the zoning officer doesn't see if he's not familiar with environmental concerns or environmental issues. And it's good for me to be a part of that because I can really help out with those issues and say when there's a potential concern, and we go out and take a look at it, see if there's wetlands on the property or any other issue. Yeah, I've been there about 6 years now. July, it'll be 6 years. And it's a great position. When I first started, it was a brand new position, and not many, I don't think any municipalities in the immediate area have an open space coordinator. I think there might be a few elsewhere, but it was nice because I got to kind of create my own path and what all I was going to take on, and taking over a lot of the stuff that Jason was managing before with land preservation. I manage all of our township-owned preserves, our township-owned properties that are not preserves, that are kind of just wildlife areas. we do have them enrolled in the Pennsylvania Game Commission Hunter Access Program, so I kind of manage that, and we give out a certain amount of permits each year for hunting on the properties. EAC helps determine some of that stuff too. Almost all the stuff with my position as the open space coordinator, I take it to the EAC and have the EAC kind of give their thoughts on it, just different points of view. They helped with the rules and regulations for all of our township owned preserves. We have one guy on the EAC that likes to think differently than the rule abiding, law abiding citizen, and he always tries to figure out a way around certain rules and regulations to kind of keep us on our toes thinking as well, and how to avoid potential issues. I manage our conservation easements. We have just over, I think it's over 50 conservation easements on properties in the township, so I go out and monitor those once annually, make sure there's no structures being placed on the easement areas, no clear cuttings, anything like that. And then I deal with our stormwater system, a little bit with the zoning department, and plan review when they come in, like I said, for environmental issues, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's all.
That's it. That's all.
How many people are on your EAC? How many are strictly volunteers?
So we have 5 right now, and we can have 7.
Or do we have 6? Because we were on Rob Kemmer.
Oh, that's right. We run on
6, and we can have 7.
We can have 7.
Yep.
I mean, it's great to have an odd number when you have to vote on things, but I mean, frankly, you don't find, I don't find a solid odds on things. Usually by the time we're discussing it, it's either yay or nay of the group, and everyone does, render their opinion. Joe works for BASF, and if you know their logo, we don't make it, we make it better. Well, that's Joe's way of thinking, is how can I defeat this so we don't have that happen to us, so we have people who are just trying to actually improve the situation.
Rob Knight's from Jacobsburg State Park.
Yeah.
Chris knows Rob, and he's
I'm sure he likes to keep you guys on your toes as well.
Yeah, he does.
We like to have fun with our meetings. I mean, we talk. Being on the board of supervisors is different. It's very regimented. Our meetings are going to be 30 minutes, maybe more, but not much. And with EAC, it's the opposite. When people get there, it's we chat a lot, we talk a lot. Everybody's we're friends. We realize we're volunteers. We want to have fun too. It's not just work. We all got full-time day jobs. You want to at least enjoy what you're doing here as EAC. So, sometimes the meetings go for a couple hours, but it's not because of business. It's just because everyone's enjoying being there, and that's kind of nice. So,
I think they look at me as too much of a taskmaster, so that's kind of something that we need to sort of adopt. This is a very fun group, but I'm always bringing in all kinds of stuff. Yeah. So this is good for me to hear, to sort of lighten up the agenda.
I appreciate the taskmaster just so we're
Yeah.
You can have fun after or before.
That's how I kind of am. I want to be like Chris. I'm like, I want to get home to the wife and kids, and so I have 2 young kids. And then the guys are just hanging out. Some of the guys are just like, I just like being here, getting away from the wife and kids, hanging out with the guys.
Yeah, it's a night out for them.
He starts talking about hunting though. He's just
Hunting, fishing, right in there.
Yeah, I think it's different when you're on the clock or tons go on. But I just found our people they wanted to talk to us, and a lot of it's focused on stuff we're doing. And so I'm like, it's fine, and we usually let it go, and at some point pull it back together, get our work done. But I found it's good. I mean, people are there, they're happy to be there, so that goes a long way towards getting things done and having long-term success.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. How did you, when you brought your EAC back, okay, as I'm understanding it, because you didn't have one for a while, but you did. To Chris's credit, I think I speak for all of us to some degree, we're newbies here, and Green Advisory Council was not like EAC. That was a whole different way of operation, and the projects that we did and stuff were very different. So I'm just wondering, when you brought your people back together again, I guess I'm wondering, do you have any ideas, suggestions on,
Like how to focus?
yeah,
or-
focus and,
Yeah.
yeah, well, Chris has been pretty good about telling us what, I mean. the whole
Telling you what
list.
to do?
No. He gave us a whole list, which was shocking as to what EACs can do. You're just kind of like, oh my gosh. And I think he's been good at telling us, okay, this is where the township wants us to focus. You know what I mean? That's the supervisors. This is where they want us to be for a while. But I guess I'm just wondering, how did you encourage, how did you bring your new people together, educate them, I guess would be a good word, you know what I mean, as to what they need to know, where they, you know, I don't know.
How'd you keep Rob in line?
Rob.
Yeah, that's it.
He's
wasn't
something.
there. That's how the story. I had one of Rob's predecessors. Dale Brinkey, who was managing Jacobsburg.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, yeah, Dale was great. Yeah, so first off, EACs are that advisory, environmental advisory. You know, that's it. You're advisory to the supervisors. You're there to help the supervisor. You're there to help the planning commission, the zoning officer, who have, public works. You're there to help them with environmental things or issues that, are confronting the township. So, this is what, we've talked about. This is what we think should happen with this. And then they need to take the formal actions and do the actual work, if it's public works, whatever. I mean, like, so, it's strictly advisory, and that's important to remember. Even when you vote on things, you're really not voting for it. You're voting just to take it to the people who are going to vote for it.
To recommend it.
So, but to that, it's okay to vote on things. It's just knowing that that's how it works. We've had some people in the past who are a little too passionate about certain things. I'll just bring up well ordinance, for instance, because he just couldn't get over, wanted to have, construction standards for wells. And I completely agree with him that we should have it. But our board of supervisors as a whole didn't want it. I still to this day don't understand it. I'd vote for it if it came before us, but the others don't want it. And that became a problem for that person. And they ultimately ended up leaving the EAC because of it. But that's where I just have to keep reminding them it's advisory. It's just because we want it doesn't mean it's going to happen. We were kind of opportunistic. I mean, there's enough things. You saw the list. It's a big list. There's enough things that you can do, and you couldn't possibly do all of them.
Right.
So we picked the things that we felt were important and were time sensitive that we needed to pay attention to, and we kind of learned about the other stuff as we went. And there's things that we don't address at all. There's things our EAC doesn't do that other EACs do, and maybe that's okay. I mean, it hasn't been a problem for us. We don't do anything with recycling and garbage hauling. We don't do anything really with climate action, although we've had the presentations and we had them do a plan for us, but it hasn't gone anywhere with us. We're a rural municipality. It's on the upper side of the valley. We don't have as many things to do with that. Now, there are some things, don't get me wrong, but we don't have as many things that can be done as maybe you can in the urban core. So EACs in the urban core probably would want to focus a little more on the climate action stuff than we would. So, but that could be next. Once we've gotten to our top priorities, that might be the next thing that we look to. So.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? One of my concerns is, we kind of said I'm a bit of a taskmaster here, but no, we're in our infancy, and we are very fortunate to kind of reestablish this group while going through our open space plan. And that open space plan has given us pages of things to do, and that's where we put together a work plan at the end of last year to kind of give some focus to what our meetings could be, also to kind of keep that open dialogue with the Board of Commissioners, say, here's what this, new board is doing. Here's, an opportunity to kind of weigh in on this action plan. One of my concerns is everybody has their own reason for joining this, and I want to make sure that we can kind of keep that passion going and kind of get to those next level things, which some of it may not be, right at the top of the list of everything else, 80% of the elected officials and the staff and what we're hearing on what we're doing. Like right now, we're doing a lot with our open space and kind of getting through a couple core objectives, but we talk about, we want to revisit things. We certainly want to talk about climate. I mean, Marie brings up fantastic, topics for us to look at all the time. And I guess, how do you guys address that? Like, especially over decades of being involved with the EAC, like, how do you focus your priorities? Because like from Carrie's perspective, like that's where I can kind of align, like let you guys know what I'm doing, but how do you see, directing where you're focusing? Like, do you guys do a work plan every year? Do you just kind of go, hey, there's an opportunity here, or has it been pretty much the same type of work, just maybe growing and expanding?
So looking back to like the early times, I mean, we pretty much had a few things we were really focused on. Obviously, official map and then open space preservation, two really big things for us. We've helped with ordinance reviews too, and planning reviews for planning commission plans, things like that. I feel like we were always picking the things that mattered the most, I think, to the township as a whole.
Mhm.
And we got that message from the supervisors and the manager and the planning commission. I mean, they were kind of like saying, this is where we need some help and what we want to do.
Okay.
We did the newsletter. We didn't have a township newsletter for years. And the manager came and said, well, all this environmental stuff's new, and it's really what people like in the community, they want to hear about. Can you guys work on a newsletter? And it's okay if it's largely environmental. So we did the newsletter for the longest time. It was pretty much all environmental.
Oh, wow.
So like we did things like that. It's like any other organization, and it's hard to get people to do things. You're going to have a couple people in any group that really just put their heart into it and dump a lot of time into it, and the other people are there and they're involved to some degree, but maybe not doing as much. It's the best thing I can say is encourage everybody to just try to find something you like to do it. There's plenty to do, even if it's just writing a newsletter article that you feel passionate about, and you can bring that into the group and discuss it at one of your meetings and say, like, this is what we're thinking. How do you think, or what I'm thinking, and how do you guys want to see this come together for the township? And then we're getting everybody's input, getting to know what each other likes, wants to do. And you can only do so much. You can't. That list is so long. So pick the things that are important and work at them.
I'd say it changes too, because every year there's different issues, different local issues that come up. Like we just had the whole biosolids issue in Plainfield Township, and now that kind of led us to work into our conservation easement documents, prohibiting biosolids on properties preserved through Bushkill Township conservation easements. And now it's leading into potentially working on an ordinance for biosolids and establishing properties that are how do they word it? It's less suitable for the spread for the application of biosolids. So you have properties that are less suitable, than you have ones that could possibly be suitable, but you'd have to go through all kinds of testing. So stuff like that comes up almost every year, different local issues that we bring to the EAC and discuss. And like Jason said, planning commission plan reviews, that takes up a little bit of time in our meetings because we review all those plans for potential issues and make a recommendation to the planning commission and the board of supervisors.
Yeah, like, I mean, you'd find, I think, like, that list is big, and each of those items could take a very long time. Doing planning commission reviews, if you've got a bunch of plans, and we used to have 6, 7 plans, 8 plans at one meeting, and we'd be there until 11 o'clock at night doing plan reviews. The bulk of the meeting was over in a half hour, maybe a little longer, and the rest of it was hours of plan reviews. And we didn't all know what we were doing. Luckily, a couple of us had more exposure from our day jobs to help guide the process. But even that, it just took a long time when you had these big subdivisions to review, 6, 7 of them in one night. And that was really daunting, actually. It was terrible. I mean, to do 1 or 2 is interesting.
Yeah, now we get 1 or 2 and sometimes none.
Yeah. So, but so it's always been like adaptive. It's like, where's the time needed, and that's what we did. And so stuff got ignored when we were doing the hot thing, and that's okay. And like, I think over the years, then you start to build on the successes. You know, you have the official map, you have open space plan, you've got these ordinances, you know, you're working the glass house, you get that, you got a trail, and you got preserves, and all of a sudden, it's like, you have all this stuff that is in place, and, you know, it doesn't feel like, you know, well, what are we doing? It's like, you realize you're doing a lot, you've done a lot, and they, all those things take some maintenance and management. It starts to become easier to just kind of do the job, you know, and then the new things come in and makes it interesting.
And if it gets slow, you could always bring up project planning for potential grants at any of these properties, or if you have riparian buffer issues, anything like that. Just things to think about and plan out. And
Do you guys do a lot with outreach and education? I know that's something that like I think was talked about with the GAC a lot, and then we've talked about wanting to do that here and having this commission or council be really good avenue for that. And it's kind of like when do we do that? How do we fit that in? Because we have so many things, you know, that we want to do.
We certainly have, we do. Well, we got, you know, like I said, the newsletter thing for the longest time was that.
Yeah.
And then that turned into the website, and that's like perpetual maintenance, right? I mean, like,
yeah, and
very good job with that.
even with newsletter articles now, so we have a newsletter that goes out twice a year, and I'm the one that writes the EAC's articles, so any environmental issues we're talking about, I'll do like stuff on invasive species sometimes. We sell rain barrels every year. We used to do like a rain barrel workshop, I think, at our township cleanup day. That was before I started. And now we just, if people want to buy them unassembled, they can, and we give out a whole handout on how to assemble it and what it does, what the rain barrels do, or that we can assemble them for the people that are purchasing them. And we sell quite a bit of those usually. I mean, if we have 20 or 25, we'll sell all of them and still get a lot more calls about them, which is crazy, but good.
That's been going on for years.
Yeah, good education for people.
With your newsletter, is that, you said you do it twice a year?
Yep.
Is that both digital and hard copy, or one or the other?
I believe they do upload it online. Yeah, they do upload it online as well. It's accessible.
But it's
on our
hard
township
copy. And it's
website,
hard
but
copy.
It is hard copy.
And you
yes.
mail that? It's
To every-
mailed to all of you?
Every resident. Yep.
Okay.
It sounds like what you guys are describing, a lot of what you're asked to do things. So a lot of the issues you address are because someone else has asked you to look into it. Is that fair to say? I mean, like the board
Yeah, I mean,
or
but we,
the planning commission or somebody says, we need EAC input on this.
yeah, I think you have the capacity, right, as an environmental council, when they see that you have an EAC and you've got these people, there's a capacity for something, right? So you can do the things they need done. So they will come to you with it. You also have an idea of some things you might want to do. And again, there's that list of things EACs do. It's pretty easy to start putting that together. Maybe it doesn't seem like it happens as quickly as you want or when you want, but before you know it, you become us, and you got so much going on. It's like whack-a-mole, you know?
Right.
So.
If you decide you want to work on something, you then go to the board and say, hey, the EAC wants to work on this. Is that okay? Or
Yeah. And that's kind of what just came up with the biosolids. We brought that to the board of supervisors, and Jason gave a little introduction to the supervisors on it, and they said, yeah, work with they asked me to work with the EAC and our solicitor on drafting that ordinance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, stuff that we.
Because I think that's something we got, that dialogue between us and the board is something that we really have to
Right.
work on establishing. And
You guys are pretty darn fortunate, because you've got Chris, and you've also got Tom Petrucci. Tom's got a great history in this stuff too, with Plainfield Township and what they did. And Plainfield had a lot of political issues, and they still do. They got worse, actually. And so Tom has seen that, like he knows the bad side of it, and he really struggled with that. And he saw what we were doing, and he was friends with our manager, and I think so Tom's, I think, a great asset to you guys as far as somebody you can really bounce things off of. I mean, if you have an idea and you're not sure how it will be taken, who to talk to, you can talk to Tom. You can bet you're going to get a good answer. He's either going to know it or he's going to go to the people and come back to you. So maybe you too, Chris, I mean,
Yeah.
And that's also like a role that Tom really likes to play too, is to kind of take something and then figure out like how the best do we get that into almost like a specific request or an action or something that we can take to the board. We found that where it's kind of like the opposite. Like our board meetings go really long because there's so much on the agenda, and so we've tried to like nail down like if it is something, if there is an idea, like if you guys have something, how can we figure out like in this meeting in the discussion, okay, like well, what is the action that comes out of that, and then we're happy to take that into like a memo or something to the board of commissioners, and we do that all the time. That's basically what we do with staff. Staff, we have the discussion of, oh, hey, we notice a need for this, and we want to update this ordinance, and we take it and then create the memo, go to the board, and then get the permission to work with the solicitor and update that ordinance. So I am more than willing to kind of take those pieces, but I think the problem is how do we like where do those ideas come from? Do they come in these meetings? Do we have little workshops? You know what I mean? Like that's where I worry. We have a lot on our plate right now, but 6-8 months from now, how do we keep the fire going and keep projects moving? Because I see 4 very passionate people, volunteers here that I appreciate you guys coming every month. How do we get more people to get engaged with this, and how do we continue? Because I think kind of your point was you guys have had a lot of issues sort of brought to you, and we're sort of stuck figuring out like, well, what are our issues and how can we address them on a municipal level?
Yeah, 'cause what I'm hearing is that there's kind of a sort of a embryo stage where you're kind of forming and kind of figuring out what you should do, and then once you mature, you've got a portfolio of things you're managing that takes up a lot of your time, so you kind of already know what are the things you're going to be working on, but getting from the infancy stage to that more mature stage is kind of the journey that we still have to go through.
Yeah.
I think for us, it's twofold, and I just to go back to what you were saying before, is our outreach, and I think allotting maybe even some time to be able to discuss a plan for that, because we would like to get more members to be able to build, our work plan, to be able to get more done. Because our work plan is really robust, and there's a lot that we have to get through. And the second part of that idea was maybe we could make some time, I don't know how it goes, but maybe we could make some time in our agendas to maybe just discuss some more of our personal agendas, and to keep those fuels alive. Certainly bust out as much of the work plan as we can, and that would be our main focus. But I don't know, just that idea.
Well, it's kind of, strategy right now is work on the open space planning, because we got a number of tangible things we need to do there.
Yeah.
Kind of spend, the next 4-6 months, whatever, kind of focus on that, and then broaden the scope to be, what else should we be working on?
Yeah, I
But
think
kind of get some early wins.
yeah, that's
Stuff
our
done,
problem
right?
is, like we always have courtesy of the floor on here, but by the time we get to that, we're already 90 minutes in, and Frank always reminds me like, hey, like we have to remind everybody like we're usually going to be here an hour and a half because we've had very long discussions, productive meetings. But again, I think it's also there's a lot to get through. We're starting to do that now. I like the exercise we did last summer, kind of getting a little bit of the, throwing stuff on the wall and seeing, what issues, and I'd love to revisit that again and try to use that in my craft. All right, what direction can we go? But I like the idea of, maybe like padding the agenda a little bit and just like leaving a little bit more space for open discussion. Because things come up. Yeah. And it's hard. It's certainly hard for me because a lot of the other, boards and commissions and councils that I sit on here in this town, I mean, we are very regimented. And this is kind of the outlier. It's a little bit more discussion. It's a lot more open. And we're not kind of stuck to the very strict agenda. And I think that's a good thing. It sounds like that really works. That has worked for you guys to be successful.
I think that's going to change though. I think once we really start delving in, we probably will be more structured and less,
Like these guys are saying, there's things you have to address because they're
right.
they're
We have
ongoing.
an agenda.
Yeah.
We have an agenda for every meeting. So we come in and Karen and I review it. He sends it out, and then he'll do the minutes. I used to do the minutes too, and like it's we definitely have our structure, but I'm just saying we let people say what they want to say and talk about it. And sometimes it gets informal and joking around, but it keeps it fun. It's not just a stuffy meeting. So, again, that's just what we do. And we're like, again, we get a lot done. We've gotten a lot done. I think it's good to have a good vision, and then visioning can be a little tough. Like, what's the vision for South Whitehall? Like, I don't know. I'm walking in here completely green. I know what it is in Bushkill real well, but I don't know what the vision for.
Well, that's right. I'd plug a little bit from a long-range planning we've been doing is we feel like we actually have a lot of the vision, and that's something that's been successful in our like implementation is we tie things back to this is where it fits in the comprehensive plan. This is where it fits in our open space plan. This is where, eventually we'll get into like the transportation aspect. So that's the kind of stuff that I think we're very fortunate to have, and that's why this recreating this group was action number one of the comprehensive plan, like to look at what are all the different boards that we have and like try to realign them and get them reactivated. And I think it's going to be then trying to nail down how do we like prioritize those implementations. Allie and I talk all the time about all the things that she wants to do and we can do and how do we put that stuff like on the ground, and it's a matter of getting getting it all into kind of a priority.
But I do think a group like this also needs to be forward-looking, and so one of the roles of this group should be to push on the direction of where we should be going, because I don't trust that the Board of Commissioners is going to be thinking about, 5 years from now or 10 years from now, from an environmental standpoint. I think part of our role is to kind of prompt them and say, these are things that we see that are coming down the pike that we should be concerned about and maybe start thinking about now. And that's where I think there's going to be some tension, though.
Yeah, it's tough because it's kind of like your number one role as an advisory board is to advise on the experts that are, your focus is the environment. Their focus is, the environment and everything else, but it's to kind of give that, but
if all we end up being is, hey, we're going to wait for the board to tell us what they think we should be working on, then I think this board will largely be a failure.
But even those issues, and Jason, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but bring those to Chris and Tom and let them figure out a way to, or work together and figure out a way to bring that to the Board of Commissioners, not the EAC. I mean, if you guys bombard the commissioners and that's no good, but bring it to them, they figure out a way to construct it, get it to the commissioners, and not be real pushy with it, but just kind of, like you said, advise, like this is something coming up here.
Yeah, I see my role as kind of the sounding board to the ideas that you guys are bringing, and then to kind of like act as that filter to see, okay, here's what we're hearing. How can we, does this fit in anything we're doing? And then how do we get that message to here's a concrete action that we want to do.
Again, as Jason said, we're just an advisory group.
Right.
But I think that's largely why the Green Advisory Council fell apart. It's because we didn't have that conduit back to the board to say, hey, let's have a discussion about whether this is something that we should be working on or not.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't that line of communication, and as a result, I think the group got very frustrated and ended up being pretty ineffective at the end, I think.
Mm-hmm.
May I? I don't want to interrupt you.
No, I'm just agreeing.
Okay, no, that's it. I'm just curious, and I don't know if this would work or not, Chris, because like you said, our supervisors, they're super busy. Our board of commissioners are super busy with many things. But your presentation that you did for the sustainable warehouse, you guys had great slides, great PowerPoint. The way you went back and forth and you talked about it, it made it look like this is doable. This is doable. Your land preservation, the stuff you talked about, the process you went through was just, I sat there and I was like, wow, why aren't we doing this? So you guys have information. So I don't know, I know John Mauser came and he talked to this board. Is that another step? I don't know if you guys would be willing to do it. But
So what Chris has up on the screen right now is Planning Commission Review Checklist. So that's kind of like, Marie, like you were just saying, our presentation for the sustainable warehouses, that all starts when the developer submits the plan to the township, to the zoning office, and the step is to go, next step, go to the planning commission for review. But before it even hits the planning commission, our EAC meeting is typically before planning commission. So we'll review the development plans that come in first, and I make sure I get a letter drafted after our review. So we review things like, is it located within one of the greenway areas on our official map? If so, do we ask for a conservation easement on that greenway area, or recommend a conservation easement be placed on that area, or any area that's not developed on the property or not in a building area? Are there any potential trail connections that could be made from this property?
Ways to reduce impervious, ways
Yep.
to reduce lawns and lawn care, have those areas be naturalized.
Are there potential wetlands? I know, and I'm sure over the years, Chris is gonna know too, areas in the township that are potential wetlands. There are streams that aren't shown on the maps, those sort of things, because Chris and I were having this discussion on the phone. The wetlands, some wetlands are delineated and shown on the GIS maps, but very few of those wetlands are actually delineated and shown on the wetlands maps. So unless an actual wetland and waters evaluation is done on that property that's to be developed, a developer might just say, well, there's no wetlands on this area, and try to slip one past you guys, or slip one past the township. So we know there's wetlands in these areas. So the EAC, one of their recommendations, and I included a letter that we can get to later on, in my recommendation letter, I'll say, make sure a wetland and waters evaluation is done by a certified professional, and the EAC gets to review that plan to make sure it's sufficient, because we have seen reports come in already too that were done by a certified professional that they miss stuff.
Yeah, it's surprising. I do surveillance and enforcement for the Army Corps of Engineers, so, and I've been doing wetlands for 30 years, and I see it all the time. I still see it, you know, and stuff doesn't come in right. It doesn't come in the way it's supposed to for us. I mean, we have buffers off of streams, and the streams are not shown because they're within the wetland area. Well, now all of a sudden, these developments go right to the edge of the wetlands. They don't account for the stream buffer they were supposed to.
Yeah, because we have
And
100.
people miss that stuff all the time.
I've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, because we have 100-foot buffers from the edge of a stream bank, and then it's 50 feet from the edge of wetlands. So we make sure as the EAC that all those are met. And I mean, the zoning officer, the planning commissioner are looking at that stuff too, but if it's not delineated on the plan, it makes it harder to tell whether they're meeting those setbacks or not.
And yeah, you know, I was gonna say too, I mean, like, you know, our solicitor, it was interesting, you have open space, and that's what you're doing, which is great, because open space, I think, to me, is like a great way for everyone to start to get a feel for what's important in the municipality. And as your open space grows and you build, it starts to all come together, the pieces start fitting together, and the connections start becoming clear. It's a nice thing for an EAC to be able to focus on. And our solicitor said at one of the meetings, an open meeting, which is great, he just said, he's like, you know what? He's like, I gotta tell you, this open space stuff, this is the biggest benefit to our residents of anything that this township does. He's like, this board of supervisors, while it's a great board, does good things, but it is mundane township business that every other township does across the state. He said, the one thing that we do differently is we do open space and environmental preservation well, and it's the best service that we offer to our residents. So feel good about it being an EAC and in a municipality that really has their stuff together. You have good professionals on staff. You know, you can make a real difference in this community, and you know, don't think that you're not important, because I think honestly you're extremely important. The rest is mundane business. And it's something that bothers me, because being a supervisor, I'm spending more time on mundane business and things that aren't environmental. And I used to be able to focus on environmental. So
Thank you for telling us that.
Yeah.
That was
yeah,
very nice.
so I think this stuff is awesome. Like, and so yeah, grow.
Well, it's an interesting, usually EACs form based off of reaction to something. And we're in this kind of situation where there's not a specific environmental issue that has been brought to the township where it says we absolutely need an EAC to deal with this. So it's kind of like the attention isn't on us yet, and it's not really like a a contentious discussion yet, but it's like we need to kind of set our focus, and we need to kind of build that up, and it'll come when we're very thankful to have an EAC that knows what they're doing, that's there to review it and there to comment on, and there to kind of back it up. And that's kind of what I see is there's so much opportunity in this township for good environmental focused decisions in a number of things that we do in this township.
And it's really important to residents. It's really important to residents.
Well, question,
Yeah.
like, seems like you guys did this, like when Bushkill was a smaller town population wise, whereas I think we're more, like, I guess advanced, so like, is the people living here, I guess like tax wise, like have a certain expectation, so it's not like they're moving into like the rich town with like lots of open space that they don't mind paying for, so like.
You're talking as far as like the tax that we've been.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
obviously, open
Yeah.
space isn't free.
No,
And I know, clearly if I was buying a house, I would like to buy in a town that has lots of it. And I'd be willing to pay extra for it, but like, I guess like here, it seems, there's obviously a significant base that may not care.
you'd be surprised though, the misconception on all this stuff. I mean, like even for us, we're really hard to sell the idea of an open space tax. People are crazy. Now, I think they'd all write out more money for it because they see what it's done and they really like it. So it was tough to get in place, and now everybody wants it. So it's leading the people in those directions. You probably have a big EIT, right? What's your take? A year? For environmental? For open space.
We don't have anything now.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you did.
No, we don't have anything. So yeah, we're looking into what it could be. But
More
I
than
mean,
us, though.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a good tax base. There's more residents, and that's where it could be like a smaller amount. They could go a lot further. So we're doing some analysis now to see like exactly what that could be and use that potentially in some, messaging, potentially polling to the community to kind of ask that question. It's like, do people feel the same way that you feel, Derek? Of yes, like when you're asked the direct question of would you rather be in an area like this or an area like this, people are going to say this, and well, how much more would you like to be there? Yeah. I think the other thing is we get so there's not a lot of. It's an interesting dynamic of our community, and I imagine Bushkill, when you started to look at some of this, there's a lot of people who lived in that rural community for a long time, and whether it was permanently protected or not permanently protected, there was open space. We have kind of established neighborhoods that don't have a lot of open space around them, and there's been turnover in those neighborhoods. We get a lot of turnover. We get a lot of people moving into the area that they could be moving from areas that there's a ton of open space that they see that it's all relative. And so that's kind of one of our challenges that I think we'll have in our messaging is kind of pointing to how specifically open space could benefit this community in a different way than maybe, someone who has been in 3 generations in a rural community of, hey, we have all these farms around that have been there.
And the township's pretty heterogeneous in that regard too, right? The northern half of the township is much more open space amenable than southern half of the township. So, when you start talking to people about, the value of open space, I think you're going to see a wide range of opinions.
Yeah, someone who lives off of Seacrest.
Well, it's always interesting when something comes up, because I've listened in on some meetings, and we had a very excellent one, and you probably would know, Chris, but I'm not real good with the township lines, but there was one where some of the land was in South Whitehall, and the rest of it was in Lower McCudgee.
Yeah, off of 78 probably.
And so a developer came in and said, and he came to the board and he said, he wanted to put some kind of, I think wasn't it like a nursing home or some type of continuing care? And it got a little contentious, and the fellow that was bringing it to the board said, well, what do you want? He goes, do you want a cornfield or do you want to take care of your old people? Well, let me tell you what, that was a big mistake because he came down on cornfield, just like that, man. He was out, and I couldn't believe he said it. But it's funny when something comes up like that, people are like, well, wait a minute. It's always like at the last minute they hear about it. It's like, well, we don't want that, you know? So it's kind of funny how it happens and where it happens, you know, they just pop up, you know, all of a sudden you're hearing about it. And maybe you had that too, I don't know.
Well, everything's a choice, right?
Right.
So there's alternatives and there's costs and benefits to whatever choice you make. And so, you know, nothing, like you said, nothing's free, right? And so, you know, I think that's part of what we can do is help educate the board or the community about, you know, what are the pros and cons of each of these options.
To see some of the things that they may be overlooking, may not be realizing.
In that vein, and one of the things, you know, I have this up here, I'd love if you could talk maybe a little bit more, if anyone has questions for these guys. For me, selfishly, that's something that I see this board as being able to offer a huge assistance in kind of our day-to-day is the land development review, because we don't have the appropriate board looking at the environmental impacts of some of our land development. You know, everyone kind of has their own little box that they work in. Shade Tree Commission is kind of limited to streets or trees in the right of way. Park and Rec looks at something sort of different. Planning Commission, very involved. We're fortunate to have great Planning Commission members, but they look at everything. And so one of the things that we do with these other boards is kind of get that information. We sit down with them and we review it, and then we kind of summarize that into a memo, kind of like Carrie was talking about, and then give that to the Planning Commission to, you know, chew on a little bit more. So I'd love to kind of get this board more involved in that. I know that's kind of a big daunting sort of task of, well, how do we look at it? What specifically are we looking at? I think this is wonderful.
Yeah. So, and we use our official map with our plan review. I'll bring it up on aerial imagery on like Google Earth sometimes, or on the county website to show where the parcel boundaries are. We look at woodlands in the area, wetland streams. We require stormwater management on all new development in the township over 1,000 square feet of impervious area. So that is usually a dry well or rain garden. So we make sure that that's shown on all new development plans. In regards to larger developments like warehouses, we'll take a look at the stormwater management and see how it can be improved, if it's really the best type of stormwater management for that property. A lot of warehouses like to do spray irrigation by us, and we just like to figure out alternatives if possible, if that's not the best way to manage it. We look at steep slopes.
So the official map is key to.
Yeah. If you want to go to our official map quick, it should be back there. And it's kind of tough to see, but Chris could even email that slide.
We actually looked at it in December.
Yeah.
We look at your
There's
official map.
overlays of the new development on this
Yep.
map, and then that shows you where they're.
Yeah, because this has all of our township parcels on it as well. They're the thin gray lines, if you can see them. So I'll figure out where exactly the development is. I'll find it on the map, show it to the EAC members. We look at that green hatched area that kind of follows a lot of the streams. That's our proposed greenway area for potential protection.
And that's a combination of the existing riparian woodlands.
Yep.
So any woodlands that were connected to streams got put on there, and it's also 150 foot, 100 or 150, I can't remember that.
150 foot.
150 foot buffer on each side of the USGS mapped streams. So all the big streams, the little tiny streams that LVPC mapped are on there too, but they're the only ones that got that buffer were the USGS map channels.
And you have a specific ordinance for that?
This is an ordinance. The
So that's
official
in your official map
is an
ordinance.
Yeah.
where you specify that you have that baked into the official map ordinance. So it
Correct.
says anything on here is, okay.
And then we also have buffers, stream buffers on all of our streams through zoning Saldo, okay? But this was, the idea of that was that we had so many streams that came through farmland that didn't have buffers on them. And if that was going to get developed or there was any change in use of that property, we as an EAC and township could say, no problem, but the 150 foot on each side is off limits. And
Yeah.
that should be restored as natural area as part of what you're gonna do. So it's a way to try to restore these areas that were lost.
Yeah,
in the past.
yeah, that's great.
That is a huge screaming, very exciting thing.
Yes, it is.
My heart just flutters so
And
much.
we had a couple
That
people
actually checks
push
multiple
back
boxes of
early
my
on.
own personal agenda. So,
And
love
we just
to
had to
discuss.
stay the course. You know, you can't make everybody happy. What we realized, we probably were making 95% better happy. And when you kind of like, the official map is just a planning tool. It's not hard and fast. It doesn't mean you can't go into that 150 feet. It means that we intend you to not go into that 150 feet. If you need to, because there's no alternatives for your property, okay, fine. How do we minimize that amount of impact? You can still go in, but let's minimize the impact. So we found ways, and that's what keeps it all legal. I mean, we found ways to work with those people. We even had people come in that their property's 100% green now, because it's on our map, and it was all woodlands, and they're like, you know, what do we do?
I had one 2
No,
years ago.
relax. You can do stuff. We had a whole subdivision come in on one years ago. That's before
Okay.
you,
Yeah.
and the whole entire thing was wooded. So what we had them do is, well, here's your road layout, here's your homes, and they put conservation easements on the woodlands on each one of the new lots that were created. And now it looks like a line with little lollipops coming off of it.
yeah, that's great.
But
Yeah.
but it preserved all those woodlands, and they would have been mowed right down to nothing had it not been for the official map. But they still got what they wanted. They still made their money out of it.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
So when they come with you in your township, when they come with you with their planning, you know, their whole plan, what the development's going to be, and then you have your easements in place, you have all this, and then they build it. Is there someone that goes back like a year later to make sure that hasn't changed? Yeah. So that is part of your, what you said
Once
before. you
a
do that
year.
once a
Yeah,
year.
that's my monitoring. Yeah.
And is that on all new development, or is that like, certainly you can't monitor it all, so maybe you do, and that's.
All of our conservation easements, all 50 of them, I go out once a year and monitor them, whether it's a
That's
full,
okay, wow.
whether it's a full walk through the entire easement area, or some of them I can just drive by and they're small enough, or the land's flat enough, I can take a look and see that it's still all protected. But I do a fair amount of walking in this monitoring, and it usually takes at least a week, sometimes 2 weeks for me to do that monitoring. But I try to do it in the late winter when things are still a little slower. I was doing them right around Christmas time before, but that got a little hectic with people being out of the office and trying to time that. So I started doing them like February, March now. But yeah, I go out and make sure there's no new structures, no cutting. I've had to send out a few letters already for people doing some cutting into the easement area, not just typical firewood cutting. It's been clear cutting. Yeah. So and they've been fairly understanding of it.
easements.
You don't
So-
have any easements?
We don't have any easements. We don't have any easements to monitor.
But that map, before the official map, the only thing that had any color on that whole map was the game lands along the northern boundary and Jacobsburg State Park, which we're just kind of barely showing in the southeast. Other than that, all those colored properties, that was all just white space that was all open for free-for-all development like everybody else.
And we just redid this map last year as part of a Lehigh Valley Greenways mini grant. Before that, there was just the parcel layers, the streams, and the greenway areas shown on the map. And now we have our township-owned preserves. We have other parks and preserves in the area, like Graver Arboretum over there on the
Yeah,
left,
yeah.
on
So,
the, west.
These
Albert Pond.
for these, not that, these, and then one more that's down here. They're preserves, they were big farms that we picked up. Developers had them
they couldn't really develop them the way they wanted to. We ended up buying them. In this case, it was a large landowner, but we bought them through the open space program and turned them into public use preserves. So we'll own those forever. There's trails, there's all kinds of, I'll let Craig talk about them, but they're awesome. These colored parcels along here, they're along Sobers Run. Sobers Run's an EV stream in our township, which that was something we worked on when I first started. Sobers Run was not listed as an EV stream, and we petitioned to get it EV, and it took like 10 to 15 years and a zillion freaking things written by all of us to try to get it. But DEP finally upgraded it to an EV stream, and we spent all this time over these years preserving all these properties that you see in these lighter green colors and brown.
Conservation easements, the brown or fee simple owned properties. We've even divested, sold some of our properties that we owned fee simply through the open space program. And doing that, we sell them with a conservation easement on the property, and we'll cut out like a building area of say 1 acre or 2 acres, whatever is reasonable for the property, as long as it's not encroaching on the natural resources that we're trying to protect on that property. And of course, the price of the property is decreased because we're preserving it with the conservation easement. We sell it at appraised value. We do it by sealed bid process, so bids come in higher than that appraised value, then it goes to the high bidder, but we have to sell it for that appraised value. So that was
money
pretty,
rolls back into the open space program to
right.
continue preserving properties. So it's pretty
it's
cool.
a pretty neat thing. And we achieved our goal, which is to preserve it with a conservation easement, and then it kind of, we don't own it anymore and have to maintain it or anything. We can let
Back on the tax roll.
Yeah, back on the tax roll.
Sounds like we need one of these, Chris.
That's kind of
Was the map?
Yeah, it's easy from the standpoint it's like quick to put in place. I mean, for us,
How long was it put in?
it only took a few months to get it
yeah, there's advertising
prepared
requirements.
and adopted. Yeah.
So it's, actually, I don't think you were here in December. We spent the whole time talking about our current official map. Like the township has an official map.
Which is
We
great
want-
because you just amend it.
Yes, exactly. We want to do some big overhaul changes from the kind of landscapes side, so all those resources in there. As we're wrapping up our transportation plan, we're going to do another amendment. The way we have ours is we have 3 official maps right now, like there's 3 pieces of it. I don't really like the way the 3 are laid out, but we kind of looked at, we could do kind of our resource protection map and then our transportation and facilities type of map together in one. So that's been kind of the goal for this group, is to get those pieces together for the resource protection map, and look at that. I think next month I'm going to spend most of our time talking about that, about kind of the resources and things we need to put together for that, and start that process.
An official map's interesting. I mean, again, it's a planning tool. It has teeth, I mean, it means business, what's on there. I mean, if somebody comes in and says, no, I just want to develop that green space, you can say, well, we've got a year to negotiate with you on this before you can do anything on it. You're not getting a permit to do anything for a year. Maybe we can still work this out where you can get what you need. We can make sure there's some protection in the meantime, or we can wait the year. And then at the end of the year, the township can take it by eminent domain. Now, nobody likes that, but I'm just going to tell you, that's the big hammer. If it's really that important to the township can take it. Now, are you going to buy it?
Yeah.
You got to. I'll tell you one thing. You have borrowing power like nobody else, because you got a tax base and you're a sure mark for any bank. They're going to give you money, so you can do it. The thing is, you don't want to hit the papers, like you're stealing people's properties and their land. So you have to be responsible about how you use the tools that are available to you. But the point is, it has teeth. You can make it work. It's a kind of a card game, right? It's a little bit of I won't say it's bluffing, but you've got to meet with them. You have to discuss it. You have to explain why you're looking to do this, what the goal of that is. How can you get the most out of this and work together. We have found that it has been very good in all, but maybe I think one. I'll say like one property was really rough to deal with.
One last year or 2 years ago was pretty rough too. The Stedmans up on.
Oh, you're right about that. So it's
They
two.
were rough.
That was
His
pretty
wife,
rough.
his wife was pretty upset about
But
that.
Jason, who is doing this? Is it the planning commission that's doing this negotiation?
No, they send it to
Is
the,
it
they send it to the
supervisors?
EAC. They send that one to the EAC to start with. And again, we're just advisory, so,
Right.
but our task is to work with them and try to get them to the point where it can be taken to the supervisors for approval.
So EAC is working directly with the developer in that situation.
And developers are great to work
Yeah.
with, because they want something, and they're
I just
willing
didn't, I
to
just
give
didn't
you.
realize they would be willing to work with an advisory board as opposed to, working directly with the board that has the decision-making authority.
Yeah.
But they're willing to work with EAC.
Oh, absolutely.
So
And then-
we've kind of discussed this a little bit, like Carrie and I have kind of compared like apples to oranges a little bit with how we've seen things go well here in the township when this stuff comes in. And I think so our problem with our official map right now is there's a lot on there, but there's not as much specification in the teeth that we have to enact that. So certainly we can, pause the development and say we want a year to negotiate, but our political interest in negotiating certain things may not be there again, because we're not really in the business of purchasing open space yet. We're not really in the business of owning and managing open space different than maybe some of our parks yet. And I think the other piece of it is we've seen a lot more success in having more of a, like, I don't want to say prescriptive requirement, but when we can point to something with the type of development that's coming in here, if we can say, hey, you need to do this, do this, do this, because here it is, people have no problem with it. And we need to get some of that in place so that when we're having these discussions with the applicants and with the developers, we can say, look, you need to satisfy this, this, and this. We take it to the EAC or we take it to Park and Rec Board, and they're saying, in order to satisfy this and this, here's our recommendation. We've seen that work really well. But I think just the negotiating at the official map stage, because there's certainly a lot on there. I mean, we have the Jordan Creek Greenway buffer. That's pretty wide. Now, the way that's written in, it's more for a trail connection. But again, okay, something comes in, we can stop and we can negotiate it or we can purchase it, but we don't have any money to purchase it.
So, yeah, I wanted to say, before we get too far, like, your open space funds cannot be used to purchase anything that's regulated through that.
Yeah, it's kind of it's the two sides of it. And I think that's where.
But not everyone understands that either. And once you get the open space stuff going and you've got some properties preserved and some trails in place, all of a sudden there's more impetus and reason for why you want to preserve something that's on that map. It's like it starts to become the thing. People know. They know when they come into Bushkill, the developers, they know they're going to want us to preserve these things. They're going to want some trail connections. They know. They're coming to the meeting prepared to deal with that.
Yeah.
So it really helps. I mean, honestly, when you put it all together, it's brilliant. It really is. It's not good. It's not states without work, or it takes a little while to get used to how it happens and how it works together. But man, it does work.
I'm really interested in the buffering, and I'll look at that a little bit more if you guys can send me some pieces of that, because I think that's really big. And that's something that we just don't have. We don't have any state regulation anymore as to buffer requirements. We don't have anything locally. We can easily add that to our official map, and I like having it in the official map rather than just Saldo, because like you said, if it's just in Saldo, we're only really triggering it with certain types of development. It might not even be in the affected area. Most of our, riparian, our township is much different than yours as well, as far as the what can be developed and what resources we have. We have a pretty focused area of natural, historic, and agricultural resources, and we don't have development pressure there right now, but there will be. And yeah, I think for some of the other stuff, like the little outliers, having something within the official map that requires buffering is a good way to kind of monitor that and require that with anything, with any sort of, you said, so how do you look at that? You wait until someone comes in with a land development application, or you?
Well, obviously you've got the educational aspect of having this stuff in place, right?
Yeah.
So, getting that out there, letting people know about it is important, But I mean, from there, I mean, we go to people, Carrie will sometimes approach property owners about possibly putting a conservation easement on part of their property through our open space program where they get paid for it. And we may overlap with that, but it has nothing to do with the development proposal. So you can use open space for that. You know, so we protect it that way, and we talk to them about public access on streams. You know, so, you know, our focus is always, again, that vision of what do we want? We wanted to see these stream corridors protected and preserved and public, you know, being able to use as the public and have some trails and things like that. So, you know, that was our vision. So that's what we always, everything we do kind of focuses on that, you know, and it hits from different angles and different properties.
Yeah, and I have people approach me too for just how we preserve land. I have people approach me that want to protect their properties. We look at some of these properties that are scenic views as you're driving through the township. We're a large agricultural community. We have a lot of nice rolling farm fields that stretch out over these areas and lead down to like Jacobsburg State Park, and we've been able to preserve a lot of those properties, which is fantastic, whether they stay as agriculture or if they one day decide they want to let it come up with a plan to revert it back to natural area. So yeah, there's all kinds of different ways that we preserve property.
I think another cool thing too is to look at, and this is like one that you guys can kind of jump on, is if you see restoration projects, there's lots of the mini grant programs, there's the DEP grant programs. You can get grant money to do restoration projects, whether that's restoring a buffer along a stream or a stream bank restoration, stabilization type project. You can do some pretty cool stuff. We had a lot of stream bank erosion problems in Bushkill, in very strategic locations, terrible spots. And we worked on those, and we fixed a whole bunch of stream channels pretty well. Most of that stuff's still in place today and doing well. It looks very natural, actually. But those are cool projects that the EAC can take on. You know, you'll find there's lots of little opportunities. Once people know you have an EAC and you're active, they'll look at you for ways to, you know, spend their grant money and get involved with their grant programs. So
even in the township parks, if you have areas that could be natural areas and reduce mowing, reduce maintenance, if you guys could pitch this to the supervisors of the Parks and Rec Board and get them on board with it, something the EAC would want to do as like a volunteer opportunity for plantings, it would be great, or grant applications for those sorts of projects. There's a lot of grant money out there for it.
And the scouts know about us.
Yeah,
True.
Yeah, the scouts are always reaching out.
They're always
Hey, Gary,
wanting to
what
do
do you
their
have? What do you
projects
have?
and-
Like, you want to do trail markers? They're like, no, we don't want to do that. We got to do something bigger. I'm like, well, we got trail markers that need to be done right now. I try not to turn the scouts away, but sometimes there's only so much we can do on these properties.
Tons of stuff.
The best trail markers you have now, though, right?
They haven't done them yet. I'm still
Oh,
waiting.
oh, sorry.
They keep saying no. They want to build a pavilion. We need a pavilion to be built now, actually. They built a kiosk. They built kiosks for us for display kiosks. They did the pavilion at Ballast Preserve. They did picnic tables. They did fishing line recycling stations because we have 5 township-owned ponds, benches. They do a lot of benches, bird
They come to
houses.
the EAC meetings, you know, to pitch this thing.
Yeah.
The kids come in with their leaders or their parents and they pitch the things to the EAC. We talk about the projects and what they're gonna do, and we make suggestions to them. Sometimes they wanna use plastic, we want them to use, you know, cedar or locust, you know.
Right.
But
They make nice stuff though. Even with the birdhouses, that's what one kid came in, he wanted to use plastic. He just wanted to buy plastic birdhouses. And we were like, no, use cedar, it's not gonna rot. And he built really nice cedar bluebird boxes, and he built, I think that scout built a bat box or 2 as well, and he did an owl box. So
Do
all
they get
kinds.
funding from that from the state, or like, are they?
They
funding it
they
themselves?
raise funds.
They raise funds,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
I'm just curious, real quick, Carrie, that, what was the name of the park that I visited?
That was, I believe that was Ballast.
Yeah, where you
Ballast
walk through
Meadow
all,
Preserve, yeah, the wildflower
walk
field.
through all that, and
Yeah.
then you go across the bridge and you're down into the woodland area
Yeah.
and that type of thing.
And that, yeah, because that's the one that the warehouse built, that trail connecting Ballast Meadow Preserve, which is a large was a large open agricultural field, or was it an
Dallas?
Yeah, was it
Yeah,
an
it's an
agricultural field? And we planted it with native wildflowers and warm season grasses. So we have a huge meadow with a 1 mile trail loop around the outside of it. And the warehouse was going in just to the north of that. We had them build a connector trail from our Bushkill Township trail, which was just to the west, as a 2 mile walking trail. They built a connector trail to connect Bushkill Township Trail over to Ballas Meadow Preserve, and then up into where the warehouse was and across the front of the warehouse, which is now making a potential connection north across Route 512 to the Appalachian Trail. So all this just kind of comes together very nicely. They built a beautiful trail going through the woods. People that would visit the Bushkill Township Trail to walk it or bike it and go down in Jacobsburg State Park never knew that Ballas Meadow Preserve was just a 1/4 mile to the east until they walk that connector trail, and it brings them out into this big open field with beautiful wildflowers, grasses, and and we have a big kestrel box in the middle of the meadow, and kestrels have been reproducing in that box for the past 3 years, ever since we had it up. And we actually have a guy that comes in to band the baby kestrels and take data on them. He's a registered bird bander. So yeah, it's really neat, the different things.
And then one thing, I know you guys talked about this, which I don't know, hopefully, I don't know about our warehouse situation here, you know, it's like you never know, but there was, like, you walk on the trail and then there was some kind of a buffer. There, you had them plant certain things. I mean, I was so surprised to know there was a warehouse on the other side when I walked that.
Yep, they planted white pines, and I think they put some spruces too on the back side of the warehouse, actually on the warehouse property. And then we had them plant an additional buffer through the existing tree line on township property of white pines and spruces to shield the warehouse. And in addition to that, I'm letting some other areas grow up naturally, because there's a lot of tulip poplars growing up in what used to be the meadow area. But now, since the warehouse went up, I'm letting some of that grow up as well to shield it even more. So when you're walking on the trail, you don't have to see the warehouse as much. And even now, it's tough to see. It's not evident that there's a warehouse there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's a great example of something that this board could kind of weigh in on.
Yes.
So like right now, like what we review with Shade Tree Commission, for example, is there's buffering requirements in zoning, but it's very limited. So coming up with new buffering requirements and specifics to that and some guidance behind that. We're fortunate. Allie and I are saying, like, we love our Shade Tree Commission. We have really, talented people on there that they help to weigh in on kind of maybe like some of the species that are there and everything. But we don't really have anything outside of the jurisdiction of the right of way that we can point to and have a review before it goes to the planning commission. So having this board look at something like, buffering like that, getting that incorporated into our zoning ordinance, expanding that, having some more guidance on, not just the physical requirements for it, but kind of the intent of it, and getting a little bit more detail,
even just
softer details.
Just buffering it from the roadway. That same warehouse along Route 512, they had a berm that they constructed, an earthen berm along the front, and I think they were in their original landscape plan, I think they had 3 to 4 foot trees that they were going to plant at first. And we came back and said we want 6 to 8 foot trees. And that's what our EAC said and our supervisors. And at first I was thinking, me personally, I was like, 3 to 4 foot trees in a few years, they're going to grow, they're going to be there. And the EAC and the supervisor were like, no, we want 6 to 8 foot trees. And they planted them. And now, they're 10 to 12 feet tall at least. So and in a short amount of time. So it made a big difference just doing that 6 to 8 foot. People that drive by there hardly know that there's a warehouse there, because until you get to the actual opening where you turn in, you can't really see it. So that was a really good suggestion, and I'm glad we ended up doing that.
You can, the warehouses, you can get these developers to do a lot of things. A lot of the things don't really cost them that much money, but they make a great difference in what the product looks like in the end and how it feels and everything. And as long as you're not costing them money, they'll give you that stuff. They're just like, yeah. When it comes to costing them money, you gotta realize they're making a lot of money on these things, like a
whole lot of money. If you haven't ever seen the statistic, they are making a lot of money. So like we have put in bridges. I'm talking contact bridges.
Yeah.
They were not cheap.
Yeah,
Three of them for that connector trail that
They were
we
like
did today.
30,000 a piece or something.
yeah. But it was probably negligible to them.
Yeah, really.
It
Yeah.
was. Now,
We're
they
lucky-
won't tell you that.
Yeah,
But I mean, you kind of just have to ask for them. You can't make them do it. That's
Yeah.
extortion. That's illegal. But
yeah.
you can say, look, and you can't feel bad about it. Your project is going to have an impact on the community. It's a big project. These people used to see in farmlands. That's what they grow up. They don't want this stuff. You're giving this to them forever. They're going to have to deal with this and look at it forever. You are having an impact on this community. So, like, how could we offset that a little bit? How can you make these people feel a little bit happier about what you're bringing to them that they don't want? Granted, you have rights. They have rights too.
Yes.
How can we make this a little bit nicer? What can we do? How can we shield it a little bit? How can we put some recreational components as part of it? How can we make it look a little different, a little better? Lighting issues, dark sky compliant lighting.
Yes.
Let's get rid of the mode areas as much as possible. We get it. You want some, fine, but where can we get rid of it? There's so many ways that you can just make them plant all native species, which makes more sense than non-native. It looks better. I think it does. In the end, wildlife will like it better.
Yeah.
And they're willing, they really will be willing to work with you. But you kind of have to say, look, this is what we'd like to see for our project, and we really do mean that. And it's good when the manager and the planners and the supervisors are behind that too.
And it's very easy for us to have, we have these conversations every day, but it's much easier for us if we have like a plan, an adopted plan behind it that says this is the vision for the community and it's a thing to point to, and also the voice of a board like this.
Exactly.
That makes my job so much easier to say, look, we're asking for you to do this, and here's the reason why, and it's not just me coming out of nowhere, so.
And it's not the supervisors, it's the elected officials that don't like to be on the chopping block.
Exactly, and it reaffirms, to them when it gets finally to them that, hey, yeah, this meets our community plan that we did. This comes through our environmental advisory council, which we have tasked to look at environmental concerns of the township, and we're asking you to meet the experts in the room and their recommendations. So.
And in the end, it's a great project. The developer got what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And you can put it out to the residents that way. It's a win-win all the way around. You just have to have those discussions, and feel good about them.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I wanted to give a chance. Someone's online. I don't know if you want to ask any questions or anything like that. What? That's okay.
Chris,
No, I
think
don't have a question.
Okay.
I'm a township resident and I saw, the calendar and I was curious about the group and stuff, so I was just checking it out.
Cool. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Being cognizant of time, I don't
Yeah,
know
think
how
we
much
should-
you want to.
We should defer the rest of the agenda.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Still a pretty short one for our EAC. Another half hour, 45 minutes. Good. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, Chris has my contact information, or if you guys want cards, I think I have cards I can hand out to you guys, and I'll see how many I have. But you can always reach out, ask questions. I'm willing to help.
We certainly appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Invigorating. This is really like,
It
gotten
was.
me even more excited.
Yes.
If
It's
that's possible.
invigorating.
I think you've kind of got us thinking now about a roadmap of,
Good.
kind of a little bit more direction about where we should be heading. And that's been very helpful.
And it'll be different than ours, but it'll be.
But there's a lot of common elements though. I mean, which things we end up prioritizing are probably gonna be different, but I think the path we take to get there, like the township map and official map is a good starting point. And then, I think some of the things you talked about in terms of, working with developers and kind of, putting our imprint on what they may think about including in their projects, I think would be a great thing for us to be doing as an EAC.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna kind of steal Carrie's checklist there and kind of. Now we do need to still incorporate that into Saldo and just kind of like authorize you guys to do that. But I think going through some of that stuff, I think helps some of my concerns about us staying focused on what we should be focused on and having kind of a checklist. And then it's good guidance to some of the things to start to think about, like how I think it's different too. Everybody, like I said, with Shade Tree Commission, you have two very good people that, I mean, they can sit there and talk species all day and they'll go back and forth and argue with each other. Yeah. So I don't want to put too much on, oh, we need to look at this facility and so forth, but I think it'd be good to start to think about what things you guys are interested in to build that.
I think they'd be good to tap into though. Correct.
I tried to get them to join. They meet right before this. Stacy could hang for another hour.
Just wanna go.
Yeah, it's a long day for them. I think they wrap up work and come straight here.
What do you think? Pressure?
Yeah. Yeah.
She's very- No, I understand.
She protects her kids.
Can I make a plug for just a couple of things? We don't have to go through the open space, but can I go through just some of the things that I just wanted to address while we have it?
Yep.
I wanted to give a quick update on the Regional Climate Action Plan. I think I sent some of this out previously. So the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission has gone through their the air quality inventory for the past couple of years, and I believe they had an EPA grant to do that. And as part of that work, they have been preparing the Regional Climate Action Plan. There's, I believe, 8 elements of the plan that deal with things like different sectors, industrial, commercial, residential, so forth like that. There's a survey open now. I think I sent it out before, but I can, after this, I'll send it out again if you guys can fill out that survey. But from your perspective, I think it'd be great to talk about what are your priorities. There are workshops. Allie and I were at the one the other day, and yeah, it was great. Yeah. They kind of ran through the different sectors, and we kind of looked at prioritizing some of the actions they're proposing. There's a couple, upcoming. I encourage you, if you can. I mean, they're 8:30, 10:30 in the morning on a Wednesday, but it definitely. I think this is something that we want to pay attention to and explore. Climate has come up a lot with this group, and kind of it's nice to see what the regional approach will be. And I imagine it's going to be municipal specific actions out of that, and for us to sort of see what direction that's going and kind of weigh in, and then consider how we look at our own priorities from there.
Like I said to you in my email, though, I think that's an instance where we really need to understand where the board is on how much of a priority this is before we get into it too deeply, because this is definitely one of those things where elected bodies could say too far in the future, it's not something we need to deal with now, or they could say, hey, this is real.
Yeah,
we're already seeing some impacts of it, and we should start to address it, or anywhere in between those two, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm concerned that if we really jump into this and we're at one spot on that spectrum and the board's at a completely different spot, that it's going to be really frustrating and waste our time. And so,
excellent point.
I think we need to make sure that we understand, at least understand where the board is on this.
I think that coming out of this plan will really help shape what our conversation is. And Allie, I don't know if you wanted to weigh in at all. I felt like a lot of what they talked about, it was not big, drastic, shifts in, what's happening, but more talking about here are some things that we can focus on, some actionable things that we can focus on that can support in climate resiliency for the Lehigh Valley. And some of that already is. We noticed some of it ties into some of the things we're already doing or that we want to do. And I think that this kind of gives us, then it's not necessarily this board's initiative to say, hey, we want to do a climate action plan for South Whitehall.
Right.
It's easier because you have this very clear kind of guiding document. And what we do with that, I'm not sure.
The planning commission is, none of this is binding, right? I mean,
correct. It's all, hopeful.
Well, when they came to Greece, they did a presentation at our last Green Building United meeting.
Yes.
And what they were asking of us, and we sent some people, they wanted input from us. Is
Yes.
that what you found when you went? They had some, I guess, I mean, I wasn't there.
Yeah, we prioritized some of the potential actions they started to develop, had the opportunity to weigh in on more, and certainly ask questions and kind of, steer if there's something that's way off. But that's where I think it's also helpful too, even if it's not just, taking this plan and adopting it down at the local level, looking into some of these different sectors and seeing are there things that align with some of the priorities that we've talked about, and I found a lot of really good ideas in there that tie in with some of our projects already. And just to help reiterate, the other benefit to some of the things we're talking about is climate resiliency, and it also gets us aligned with what maybe there's potential funding coming out of this, maybe it's just more support coming out of this. The other thing I wanted to mention was, really, thanking these guys for coming. I think this was great. If you guys would like to do more of these sort of inviting guests in, I can kind of maybe put together a list, or if you guys want to work on a list. There's been people, organizations reaching out to me, and I said, hey, we have an EAC now, it'd be great. So let me know if you like this. I know we have a lot of work to do, maybe like every other month. Might be something to consider. The Little Lehigh Watershed Stewards is a group. They reached out. They were looking at a potential for a cleanup in the spring. The problem we have is I couldn't find a location that was full of enough trash to justify a very well organized cleanup, and this would be a stream cleanup. So if anyone has any thoughts on that, let me know and we can kind of talk to them, but they need to find a location soon. But otherwise, I thought they'd be a good group to come out and talk to us about our connection with the watershed, being within the Little Lehigh watershed. And then I think we also had someone who was interested in doing some bird studies in the township, and I talked to her briefly, and I can maybe see if she wants to come and give a presentation.
Somehow.
It'd be nice if we eventually get to the point where maybe we have a supervisor or two come to one of our meetings.
So I sent this meeting out to the Board of Commissioners. I had people reach out to me. They're very excited about it, but I did have people reach out to me and say they couldn't make it. And they wanted to make sure that, they could get the recording and see what these guys had to say. But yeah, that I think that'd be nice.
It'd be good. I mean, when we had the Green Advisory Council, Diane would call into the meeting.
Okay.
And just sit there silently.
Yeah.
She wouldn't even acknowledge that she had attended, right?
Oh.
Which is kind of weird, but she'd show up on the screen as, Diane Kelly, right? So, that's fine. Obviously anybody can do that if they want to, but I'd be more interested in having a commissioner or two come to the meeting where we can actually have a dialogue with them.
That's a good idea, and we could set the agenda like that,
Yeah,
and
so
directly
we
invite
could set it
them.
up in advance and
Yes.
actually invite one of the commissioners to come to the meeting specifically so we can engage in a dialogue with them as opposed to just having them attend in the background.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not saying we do that next month. But I'm just saying,
No, but I think that's a
if you're
great
talking about
idea.
bringing in outside people,
And we can start to put some feelers out there too, as well, from their perspective as far as like timing. If there's a good month that they get a lot of availability, would be great. That's all I have. Sorry.
Okay. All right. I guess we'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Anybody want a second motion? Second.
Okay. All in favor?